So I've been asked to speak about the emerging buyer behavior, and this is going to be a little bit different than the emerging buyer. We always think about the emerging buyer as somebody who's new coming on the scene, and really in Canada we've got 30,000 healthcare professionals, physicians, 19,000 pharmacists. That number doesn't really seem to change. It changes in how they go through their daily practice, but we're all still approaching them in the same way. So I'm just going to cover off a few things. And one thing is that people do today what they did yesterday, not what they should do tomorrow. And that's because of change, the fear of change. And we're talking about change today and innovation. But I was listening to Maria Tremonti, CBC One talk, I think it was 2 days ago. And what I took away from that was that leaders are those people who are innovative before they became leaders. And the innovation tends to slow down after that. They maintain and they manage, but they don't look to where they came from and how they got there. They continue to do the same thing day on, day on. So I'm going to be specifically talking about sales as it pertains to the emerging buyer behavior. And if anybody in this room disagrees with this slide, I'd just like to see a show of hands. So I'm preaching to the choir at this point, but it has to change. What we're doing right now, what we've done over the past 10, 15, 25, and 50 years is exactly what we're doing today and what we'll continue to do tomorrow unless we change it. There was an HBR article which came out, and it indicated that CEOs who focus on sales management have a greater return, there's a greater profitability. They focus on analytics. We've heard from Michael and Ian and the speakers before us about big data, but it's also about big analytics, understanding what's happening in the marketplace. And what the CEOs are saying is the IT group, they're pushing it back onto IT because they feel technology is an IT thing, and it may not be, is that they need to develop ways to talk to customers remotely and allow those customers to serve themselves with the information we're sharing with them. Why is this? Let me give you a scenario. I'm going to come into your office at 3 o'clock today, and I'm going to knock on your door, and I want 10 minutes of your time. And there's 4 people behind me who are going to do the exact same thing, day on, day off. Every single day, there's more reps coming in to knock on your door. It's not the way that the customers want to be serviced anymore. They're time-strapped. They want more service, less selling. They want people who are educated, intelligent, and able to help them provide value. But I think most importantly, and which is understated, is they are tech-savvy. They have 3 screens. They have iPhones, they've got iPads, they've got laptops, and we still approach them in the same way we have over the last 50 years. So they have changed, but we haven't. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, are we actually connecting with them? Pushing information is one thing, but are we connecting? Are we meeting their needs? Are we addressing it from their perspective? I have gone up against this proposition for the last 20 years. And the Pareto principle has been perhaps, in my opinion, misinterpreted by the pharma industry and other industries, but particularly pharma in this case. This was originally proposed as a way to measure items, products being sold in the marketplace, and it stated that 20% of your products will generate 80% of your revenue. How pharma has interpreted it is 20% of your customers will generate 80% of your revenue. It's a totally different factor. So if 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers, I think there's another way to look at it, that 98% of your revenue should be coming from 95% of your customers. And what happens is, in pharma, we don't call on 95% of the customers. We call on 20% of the customers. 1 in 5, the rep goes out, they knock on the door. Can I have 2 minutes of your time? Can you please sign this for my samples. It's not how the customer wants to be treated anymore. It worked. It worked well. We had mirrored sales forces. We had mirrors upon mirrors. We had crisscrossing going on, but the doors are closed. We've got to find new ways to reach them. And so calling on 1 in 5 doesn't work. What we have to look at is a way to offset the costs. If you're spending 200 to 300 plus for 2 to 4 minutes of people's time, there has to be a change. Now we have the opportunity to decrease the cost and increase the market share of voice. So if we have an increase in share and we have a decrease in cost, we have an overall profitability. We no longer have to cut the middle layer of sales reps in order to make our bottom line look good. We have the ability now to increase the top line while maintaining our cost at the same level. Pharma will look at this as a, this is the long tail marketing approach, where focus on 20%, it'll generate 80% of our revenue, but it really is only 45% of the market if you look at the area under the curve. There's 55% of the market which is completely ignored. And the reason it's ignored is because it's too expensive to send a rep in a car to knock on a door. There has to be other ways to reach them. And if the companies who reach these customers in the long tail are the only customers talking to them, if we only focus on 20% of the market, 80% of the market is ignored. Therefore, if you're the only game in town, you have 100% market share potentially in that door, as opposed to splitting market share with 4, 5, 6, 7 other companies who are competitive in your marketplace. So the 21st century approach, and I think it's just the 20th century approach, is to call on as many customers as possible in the way that they wish to be called upon, not that which we have been doing in the past. Understand their needs, collect their data, push that data, whether it's big data or small data or big analytics or just analyzing it all, push that back into your CRM. Push it back in a way where it's accurate. It's not filtered through the eyes of a rep. It's filtered through the eyes of a customer. If you can do that, you then understand what needs to be done with that customer in order to change them from this point to that point. We always work within segments. D1, D2, D3, A, B, C, gold, silver, bronze. As a buyer, I have certain ways I think about things. I look at information, the way I review it. I want a rep coming to me with information that's specific for my needs. Not a guy like me, not a person who lives in Ontario, but specific to my needs. And unless you're doing that, you're missing the opportunity with the customer. There's a common problems. You got limited resources. There's so much downtime and waiting time and windshield time. There's geography challenges. There are companies with 10 reps trying to cover the entire country. There's reps with 2 and 3 provinces in their own territory, and the expectations keep going up. There's tracking and analysis issues, but there are ways now to maximize those resources. So you can take that very valuable resource of a trained sales rep who knows the content, knows the message, knows how to deliver it, and give them new tools. If they're a carpenter, give them a better hammer, and they'll build houses faster. You need to be able to get to your audience virtually anytime, anywhere. That is at their computer, that is at their email, that is in their office, that is when they want data. When they want to talk to you, be ready to talk. When they're ready to listen, you better be ready to talk. And you need to take out your geography limits. Customers north of Barrie typically don't get seen very much. Saskatchewan, the East Coast. Now there's people living there, I'm sure of it, and there's doctors who treat these patients. But as an industry, we don't talk to them because they're not worth enough. And they're not worth enough, not because they're not valuable, but because our costs of reaching them are too high. so we cut them off. There have been numerous studies done that show they are worth talking to, so let's talk to them. This is a reach and profit. Any of the CEOs will see this and say, okay, how come we have such a high profit here? Well, because your cost of supplying that is lower. Thank you. So what we need to do is find ways to communicate more cost effectively to the customers. I just want to go through a couple things here in my last few seconds. McKinsey came up earlier. Email is 40 times more effective. 70% of doctors use tablets, okay? And 90% own a smartphone. So if you're not building content for these people, you're missing them, totally. They have 3 screens, so go, okay? If you can name anyone in healthcare that does not review electronic content, raise your hand. If you could seamlessly connect with them, would you? So ask yourself, why are pharma companies still hesitant to reach more customers more frequently to unlock their full potential? Don't boil the ocean. It's a cliche, but it's so true in this case. You don't need to change the entire organization in order to reach these people in new ways. Just keep it simple, go steady, start small, and you'll reap the results. Thanks very much for your time.